Hello and welcome to Moessieurs for this new video dedicated to MODX M, which will also apply to the Montage M and ESP too, of course. We're going to talk about polyphony. I've seen several questions about that topic on the web. How it works, how to count it, that's what we're going to see. Before we begin, please click on like if you enjoy this video content, and I also invite you to click on the boost to highlight it in YouTube recommendations. Let's start with the FMX with that performance. The FMX has 128 notes of polyphony. This means that, if you are using one FMX parts in a performance, you can play up to 128 notes at the same time. Be careful when using the sustain pedal, it's work in the same way for the three audio engines. The more you use the sustain pedal, the longer you hold the notes, and the more it reduces the available polyphony. Here I only have one part. There are two important things to take in count about FM synthesis. There is no point in cutting some operators by lowering the levels like this, thinking that it will give you more polyphony. Absolutely not on FMX. What matters is what comes out of the algorithm. Whether you have two operators or 8 in use, it will be the same, you will have 128 notes of polyphony. Second point, FMX is mono. To create pseudo-stereo, you can select this part, pan it to the left, copy it, and pan the second part to the right. This will reduce the polyphony to 64 notes, because you will have two FMX parts, which will share the 128 notes polyphony. If you are using for FMX parts in a layer without splitting to simplify the example, you can play at maximum 32 notes. If you also use sustain pedal in that example, you will have 16 notes of polyphony available. This is something you need to take into account, the use of the sustain pedal or the hold button, which acts in a close way. That's for the FMX, it's pretty easy. Now let's take a look at the ANX. I've chosen this ANX pad. It's the ANX block output that counts, giving you 12 notes of polyphony on the MODX M and ESP for MODX M, 16 notes on the Montage M and ESP for the Montage M, no matter how many oscillators you use and the noise too. One very important thing to keep in mind is there's a really interesting setting that lets you enrich your ANX sounds, called unison. Unison will count in polyphony management. You have a unison of 2, unison of 4, the more you increase the unison, the more it will reduce your polyphony capacity. Be careful with this, on the MODX M, you can play 12 notes with unison off. If you add a second part, they will share those 12 notes. If you add a third part, they will share those 12 notes too. If you layer them all using the entire keyboard, it will start to reduce the ANX polyphony with a maximum of 4 notes played at the same time, without using unison. I'm preparing an interesting video on this topic, with a tip that can be useful. To switch about AWM2, I'm going to do it with ESP that allows me to show you on screen, in a broader and more detailed and interesting way, how to manage polyphony. We are on ESP, on Cubase 15 Pro. AWM2 allows you to use up to 128 elements, 128 oscillators. For AWM2, the number of oscillators will come into account. It is not the AWM2 part output that matters, it is how the oscillators are managed. For the first example, I choose a piano, the CFX Concert. With 18 elements, don't think that you'll be limited in notes number you can play. AWM2 has much more flexibility. We can split elements and manage velocity for each of them, to best reproduce an acoustic instrument as example. You can see that there are a lot of elements on the lower part of the keyboard from C-2 to G5, and then the crystalline element on the upper part. This allows us to gain polyphony, and we also gain in velocity management. In fact, when you play a note, even with 17 elements, you only use one polyphony note. If you play a 4-note chord, it will use 4 polyphony notes on pianos that are constructed like these, with splits and velocity management. When you perform with multiple parts, it's not the piano that will take up the most polyphony. There is the key off, which, when you release the notes with the tail of the other note, counts a little bit, but there is only one short duration element, so it won't consume too much. It's not going to be the same story when we start looking at string sounds. I filter for single-part performances here in the attribute to simplify the video. Let's take the ensembles, the Saint Ensemble K, which I really like. You can see 5 elements set to on. The important point, which you'll also find in many brass sections, is that there is no split on the keyboard, and the velocity levels are the same. When you play a note, these first 3 elements use 3 notes of polyphony. If you play a 4 notes chord, plus a left hand with 1 note, you consume 15 polyphony notes. This will start to reduce the number of notes you can play in your performance with other parts. And then there are certain 2 elements that can be activated or deactivated, such as the 4 or 5, which can be added. Strings and brass sections in general way can use 3 to 5 elements, which impacts the available polyphony. The sounds that are really the most consuming are the organs. The example I often see is a layer with an organ sound, a piano, a pad, all 3 layered, and the available polyphony plummets, with some notes being cut off. You have to understand that for an organ, if I take this one here, the plus, look at the elements number used. This one uses 8. Each across the entire keyboard range, across the entire velocity range. You play 1 note, it consumes 8 notes of polyphony. You play 6 notes, it consumes 48 notes of polyphony. You add a piano, which doesn't take up too much, and a string section that takes up a moderate amount. If you start using the sustain pedal, you could quickly reach the maximum polyphony available. A quick reminder about organs: a real organ does not have sustain. This will allow you to gain polyphony. When you're on ESP, you have to go to the common level, and then to receive switch, and simply disable sustain like this, on the parts where you don't need to use it. And to finish with ESP, here it's Montage M ESP version. There is a difference between the MODX M and the Montage M in terms of AWM2 polyphony management. For the MODX M, whether you use presets, the factory sounds, preset samples, ROM, user waveforms, or sound banks that you have purchased or downloaded, the polyphony is 128 notes. On the Montage M and ESP for Montage M, you have 128 notes of polyphony for preset sounds and built-in ROM preset waveforms, and you have 128 independent notes of polyphony for user waveforms. It can be useful to be able to use parts with user waveforms to manage polyphony. I'm going to give you a few tips. First one, as I explain, if you're using an organ, disable the sustain on it. Select the part, it's not like in ESP, go to Navigation, Controller. And here you have the transmit and receive switch screen. For example, if I have a piano, strings, this amazing pad, and an organ, on the pad, disable the sustain like this. Afterwards, I save the performance by using Store. Disable sustain on parts that are not essential. This will give you more polyphony available for sustain using, especially on a MODX M synth. On Montage M, if you have user organ sound banks, you should use those organs instead. You have Organimation from K Sounds, you have Organ Lover Bundle from Easy Sounds as well, which will allow you to use external samples on Montage M and take advantage of the dedicated polyphony. For pianos, check for ITB Music Online sound banks. However, this won't help you on the MODX M, which handles all AWM2 elements in the same way. The Montage M must still keep some advantages. We've seen that it's not really the piano that's consumed polyphony. For the strings, if you want a real string section in a performance with several parts, it's difficult to replace it with another synthesis. What can we work on? If you really don't have a bank that you bought on Montage M, and in any case on a MODX M, it won't help you. Think you have the other synthesis. This is where you can start sharing your polyphony management. For organ sounds, you can do some really interesting things with the FMX. Try using an FM organ. As reminder, on the YC stage keyboard, there are 3 H-type organs, and also there are 3 FM-type organs. The YC have them for a good reason. It produces great sounds. You can do some very interesting things on organs with the FMX and even with the ANX too. Purists will tell me it's not exactly the same. True, but for us, the important thing is that we can play in front of our audience, keeping our polyphony, without the sound cutting out. It's the same with the pads. This pad is very nice. If I'm not mistaken, it was made by Dom Segolas. But it's AWM too. It uses 3 elements. You can see them at the top screen, 1, 2, 3, which are lit up in white. It's not huge, but it uses 3 elements. If you have polyphony issues, choose an ANX pad if you are not using other ANX parts. Go look in the ANX, go look in the FMX as well. It will let you start working with the 3 audio engines. That's what will allow you to gain and preserve polyphony, especially with the MODX M. That's video ending. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found the content interesting. Feel free to click on like, and I also invite you to click on the boost button to highlight this video in YouTube suggestions. As official Yamaha expert and specialist, if you want to learn more quickly how to use or take in hand your Montage M, MODX M, ESP, Camelot Pro, or any of the Yamaha synthesizers and stage keyboards that I use, or also Cubase MIDI and audio recording with them, you can request an online masterclass with me. You choose your session topic, and you can download your session video to watch it as many times as you need. If you are a Moessieurs YouTube community member, you will get 15 minutes extra time for each session. How to become a member? Just sign up on YouTube. It's a monthly subscription of €3, and you'll get more than just the 15 minutes extra time. You'll get to see all my videos in preview, without ads, almost 1 month in advance, as well as my private videos without ads too. Don't hesitate to join the Moessieurs YouTube community. See you soon for a new Moessieurs video.